Let's see. So it should start any second. Oh, it already, yes. Teams tells me again that I have to tell you that we are now recording, which is what I do right now. Okay, and you still see my presentation, right? I hope.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yes, then small round. Welcome to our June meetup on a hopefully interesting topic where we will compare Power BI Pro with the still quite new premium per user licensing option. I think it was officially released in April this year, rumored for some time, and there was some preview phase in before, but officially available since April. And we also in the group always got questions of doing some premium topics or what do you actually get for premium. And it's really a huge topic, so I had to break it down to some extent. I will outline a bit what to expect from today's session. But the main focus is like, you are a pro user, you consider switching to premium per user, what do you get for your money, and is it worth it? And the spoiler answer and short answer is yes, it's worth it. The long answer and the favorite answer of most BI analysts or so is it depends, because it depends on your use case and if you actually need the additional features, but this is what we will go through today. To quickly introduce myself, you know me as an organizer in this group. But if I'm not organizing something in this group, I also do some other stuff with Power BI in a company called GameDuel. We're a gaming company from Berlin, and we make browser and mobile games since 2004. I'm the team lead of the business intelligence team. Overall, we are over 120 employees from 20 plus nations, so quite international. And of course, as a gaming company, we are very data driven. We handle large amounts of data. And we are actually using Power BI since 2013. And now you think like, wait, 2013? Wasn't Power BI released in 2015? And yes, that's right. The Power BI as we know it today was released in 2015, but the functionality was already available until back in Excel 2010, I think, was the first Excel version. You had some add-ins there with Power Pivot, Power Query, DAX, everything you also know from Power BI was already available there. And if you want to connect, I'm on LinkedIn. This is usually my preferred source. So I have the QR code there, and also quick information, the whole presentation with all the links, because I also have some follow-up links for you to dive deeper into certain topics that you're interested in, will be made available after the talk. Yes, so quickly, before we start, here's a quick overview again of the Power BI licensing and pricing overview before premium per user. And there you basically had a free option and two paid options. And the one that's most common, I think, also in our group was the Pro license. I have here the euro prices from the German website is 840 per user per month. I think the US dollar price is $10 per user per month. And basically free and pro are almost the same. I think in the past there were some more differences, but now free is very comparable to Pro. And the biggest difference between the two is the secure and easier sharing within a company that you get with Pro. And we had this in other past meetups as well. And I also always hear it from other companies that they say like, I can save the money for Pro and just use free with publish to web sharing functionality. And we always say like, no, don't do this. This is not secure. It's actually public links that you share there. So don't do this. And this is what you basically get for Pro. You have some other things. You have a 1 GB model size limit. You can have up to 8 refreshes per day if you do scheduled refresh of your report. You have 10 GB storage per user. It's recently you also have the AI visuals. That was listed on the page as a Pro feature. I probably think you also have it in the free version, just in Power BI Desktop, but I'm not sure here. But this is what you get with Pro. And then there you see it also in the pricing. There is a huge jump towards premium, and I named it here premium per capacity. It's starting at over 4,000 euro per capacity per month. Capacity is kind of, it's not the user. You can have multiple users there, but still the price jump to compare to Pro is huge. You get a lot of benefits. The whole package is more aimed towards larger enterprises with hundreds of Power BI users. Then this premium price also becomes reasonable. Actually, in the market of BI tools, also it's not overpriced or anything. It's really just a different market or a different target for premium per capacity. But that's not our topic for today. And you see you have a much larger model size limit, more refreshes, and you also get things like multi-geo support or bring your own key for security, which is, again, more something for larger organizations. But the interesting part is these additional premium features, which we will go through now. And this is a thing that is also relevant for Pro users or also for individual users, because they bring some benefits to your workflows also when you're working with smaller data sets or smaller reports or in smaller companies. And this is why Microsoft introduced premium per user. And there was always a long or rumor or like rumors going on what will the price be, and there was always like Microsoft always said like it's something between 840 and 4,000, and let's see what it will be. And thankfully, in the end, the price is much closer to the Pro side, so it's twice the price of Pro, so 19 euro per user per month or $20. US dollars. And you see you get the benefits from premium. You also have a larger model size limit, not as large as premium capacity. Also more refresh, more storage, and especially the additional premium features, which is the main topic for today. The good news also is that you can try both Pro and premium per user for free for 60 days. So also premium per user, and you always find it in your you have added a screenshot in your account. If you click on this and then you are on a Pro account and then you see something like this, try premium per user for free, unless your admin has disabled it. But by default, I think it's active. I will mention a few things along the way that you should not now, now I want to try everything, because unlike with Pro, premium per user is not fully compatible with Pro. There are some, or there are limitations. I will go through those. But in general, you can try it for free. And this is also this is the full premium per user package. So you can, for 60 days, so enough time to check it out if this is something for you. I tried to break down what you get with premium per user into 9 topics, and I will cover 4 of them in detail, because otherwise it would blow the whole meetup. We would need hours. And actually, even from the 4 I talk about, they would qualify to be covered in their own meetups to some extent. So these are the yellow ones. These we will go through in detail. I think they are also the most interesting ones. The other ones are either not saying they are not interesting or not important, but there's not so much I could show you. So for example, with the data size, you have larger models. So I could show you a very large model, but it's basically the same as a small model. And if very large models are something relevant for you, then you've probably already considered premium. And the other topics also, we've already covered them to some extent in our past meetups. For example, paginated reports is something where we have a recording also on YouTube. So this is also a prominent feature, but I won't do a deep dive here again. Let's quickly go through these 5 features that I won't do a deep dive on before going into the live demos for the other ones. So data size, it means that you have the large model support, so it allows for models larger than 10 gigabyte in the Power BI web service. The upload limit, though, is still, for Power BI Desktop, is still 10 gigabyte. But this gets relevant with a feature called Incremental Refresh, which in the preview phase was a premium-only feature. Now it's also available on Pro, but together with Premium, you can have the strength of uploading a very small model to the service, which then incrementally grows over time. Every day it adds new data to your model, and then after 2 years it might be a 100 gigabyte model. This is something possible with premium per user now, but the upload size is still there's still a limit there. Security features, I've added a link here to a security white paper where they also go through the what was added for premium per user. The additional security features here are especially covering the additional things that premium comes with, so the additional data flow capabilities, paginated reports, and the AI capabilities. I recommend, if this is relevant for you, checking out this white paper. It's all listed there, but I won't go through this here in detail. The next two topics, data preparation, paginated reports, those are the ones that we already covered in the past. So data preparation, we had a workshop in February, not specifically about the premium data flows, but about the visual data preparation, and to fully use Power Query Online and to use the full potential of data flows, you need these additional premium features. Things like linked entities or direct query. You don't have this with Pro. You still have Power Query Online data flows, so you can still use it, but to really bring it almost on par with what you have in Power Query Desktop, for Power BI Desktop, you need the premium features. And there I also have a link with what you actually get there with premium. And again, the most prominent ones I think are the linked entities when you combine the queries and direct query. And the paginated reports, yeah, so it's probably one of the most prominent features of premium. It has a much steeper learning curve than Power BI Desktop. We saw this in our Meetup back in March, and the good news here, I've added the link there. We have a recording of this Meetup available on our YouTube channel by Laura Graham Brown. She walks through what you do, how you use paginated reports to create pixel perfect reports. Mainly they are used for printout. So it's a special use case, but something that covers, or paginated reports covers something that Power BI Desktop doesn't. So I think it's relevant. If it's relevant for you, then check it out. And she did a great talk. So again, no need to do a deep dive here. And also on her YouTube channel, she has a nice video series walking through in small videos, step by step, from scratch to a full paginated report. So you can try that out. And last but not least, this was for me the hardest to cut, but I still decided to do so time-wise. But also because cognitive services is the only feature, premium feature, that causes additional cost when you use the feature or really use it in a production environment. So you can test it for free and everything, but it's like a sentiment analysis or language detection, so word analysis in general. And it's you need an Azure account, and you need to really use it like on larger volumes. It will cause additional cost. Everything else, though, that I just mentioned and what I will mention now is included in your premium per user package. I still added a tutorial here, and I will show not a similar feature, but a feature that is kind of on a technical side comparable with Automl. Yeah. So I had to cut this here also from the talk. But now enough of what I had to cut. Now we want to go on what I actually will show you, and those are also, in my opinion, the four most interesting topics. That is deployment pipelines, which is also, together with XMLA, my favorite feature of premium per user, or at least where my workflow benefits the most of. So deployment pipelines allows you to set up development, test, and production environments in your Power BI web service. And this is especially helpful if you regularly have the process where you get feedback from team members to change something in a report. And then with Pro, you have to create a copy of the report, then share it, get the feedback, and then implement the changes back into the production report. And here you really have separate workspaces in an easy to handle tool that you can keep in sync, and where you can say like, hey, look in the test workspace, give me your feedback, and if the person says yes, that's perfect, that's what I'm looking for, then with the click of a button you can push it to production. So that's really, really cool. XMLA endpoint, probably something you've heard of when you follow the Power BI blog also, especially here the read-write capabilities allows you to connect to the to Power BI reports in the web service and also change them there. I will show some features there. Again, this is a huge topic where you could cover 3 or 4 meetups with. I will show one particular use case where I think that's most interesting for pro users. AutoML, so auto machine learning, is another cool feature from Premium per user, where that allow you to set up no-code, low-code machine learning models right on a Power BI data flow. And it gives you you can train the model, you can get a report of the training and then apply it to new data to, for example, predict numbers or predict buyers or something like this. And last but not least, there is the goals feature, which is relatively new. It was released in early May. I think it was announced at Business Application Summit. And released then, which is basically a scorecard tool. So you can create your own scorecards and use them, run them on Power BI data sets and share them with your team. So, okay, this is it. And now we will go to the live demo part and I will walk through these 4 topics. Quick information, questions, keep them coming in the chat. Arto will keep an eye on this, and I think that after each topic we can do a small break if there are questions. Good. So with this, let's go to Power BI. And yeah, so at first glance, it looks very familiar. So there's no big difference to Pro here, of course. And we want to start with deployment pipelines. And we also already see it here in the menu to the left. And let's click on this. And I already have one that I will use later. And now we will create a pipeline. And I will just click on this. And the pipeline name, I have to think about one. Let's say Meetup. Create. And that was already it. So with a click of a button, we created a new pipeline, and we already see the overview here. We have development, test, and production. And now what we have to do, of course, is we have to assign a workspace. And we can either assign a development workspace and then kind of push the changes to test and production, or the other way around. So if you come from Pro and you already have a workspace that you use as an app, for example, you can also go the other way around. You can say, this is my production workspace, and then you can create new workspaces out of this. So to do this, we will create a new workspace. And this is what we will do here. So we create a workspace and we will name it our June workspace, which is available. That's amazing. And if we now go to advanced, you will see here the first important thing, or also the question that probably a lot of you might ask. So is it compatible to Pro? So what if you have a company where you have Pro and Premium per user users? And here, when you are, now I have a premium per user license, of course, then I can select what license mode to use for each workspace. The moment I set it to premium per user, I can use the additional features, but then also my users need a premium per user license. Or you then on a premium capacity, then it's a bit different, but still, so you need a premium license. I can still create a pro workspace and work together with pro users, but then I can't, for example, use this workspace in a deployment pipeline or use some of the other features. So you can still work together with pro users, but if you really want to heavily use these additional features, you have to roll out premium per user to these users as well. So we will save it, our June workspace, and let's go back to our deployment pipelines, Meetup June. And now we can click on assign a workspace. We see our new June workspace that I just created. And here you also see I have one. You see this here in your week workspace overview. When there is this diamond, then it's always a premium workspace. And so I have all here these premium workspaces, and I have one pro workspace. And you can see also here that I can't select this one. So pro workspaces don't appear, and other workspaces that are also already assigned to another deployment pipeline also don't appear. So I will select my June workspace. Also tells me here again. And then I have to select, like, okay, development, test, production, where do you want it to be? I would start from scratch, so from development, and then push it all the way up to production, but the other way around would also work. Assign. And now we have a workspace with nothing in it yet, so not super interesting at the moment, but this is our first step. And now I have a report here. It's a super small report, because when recording and live demos, I don't risk anything. Oh, I have to save it first, sorry. Save. And I will save it into my June workspace. Select. Foreshadowing, this is my XMLA report that we will use later. But let's wait for it to be published. Okay, got it. We go back here, and then you see, okay, now I have a data set and a report in my workspace, and now I can deploy it to the next stage. So let's do this. Let's click on deploy to test. And then you already saw it here. So Power BI is creating a new workspace for me. So I don't have to create all these workspaces, but I can do this it happens automatically, and by default it's named June Workspace Test. You can also rename this. I will leave it now at this. And then you see here, this is the important information. It tells me those two, so development and test, are now in sync. So the content in the two workspaces is the same. If I go to my workspace overview, you will see that here it created a new workspace, June Workspace Test. And we will do the same again to create our production workspace. And then I will show you what you do when you change something. So the typical process. Give it a second. And then at some point, we should also have a production workspace. Yes. Now we have it. And then theoretically, I could create an app. That's the usual, also best practice, to always share your content in an app and not individually by a report. And then I could update the app. I can refresh the reports, which is actually also necessary. I will show you. And yeah, and that's there we have this. Now we have all our workspace. And for example, if I go to the production workspace, you will see that here I have the report, I have the data set, so it's the exact same content there. I will now go to my other pipeline simply because I have a few more reports here, just to show you something, what you do when let's do a change to the report and then push it to the different stages. So Again, it's very similar to what I just showed you. We have a pipeline demo, development workspace, a test workspace, and a production one, and they are currently all in sync. And I can also click here on show more, and then I see my content. So I have 3 data sets and 3 reports, all the same, and same here. So nothing spectacular. And to show you in the pipeline demo workspace, the report very quickly, it's a super simple sales report where we have gross revenue by month. It's based on the worldwide importers database, so nothing spectacular here in terms of the numbers. So this is our gross revenue. And now let's say we have a request, hey, I also want to have net revenue here in this overview.
Christoph?
So yes, there's a question.
If I could, yes, I would like to address a question. Regarding the deployment pipelines, one question always comes on my mind is how can we elaborate a little bit, including tasks, include some kind of planner, for example, integration for this kind of each of the pipeline stage. For example, if we are developing, we can integrate some tasks on that, or just inside of the Power BI, for example.
Yeah, there is. I will show you in the end of the overview. There was recently an announcement for deployment pipelines API that Microsoft is. I think it's in preview still, so it's relatively new. But they got the feedback that the companies need a way to kind of communicate with the deployment pipelines not only through the UI, but also with external tools, or when they build their own tools and then kind of push changes or sync the pipelines this way. So this is possible. I will share a link with you there, but I won't show it here in the demo here. I will just show the basic feature.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but the possibility is there, or it's at least in preview, so it's being worked on and will be more. There will be more features in the future. Does it answer your question?
For sure, thank you.
Okay. And again, all links will be shared, so don't worry. Yeah, so you saw the report, and here, for example, I have the new report. I've already added the measure, and besides that, no changes. I've also updated the chart. So let's publish this to, yes, I always have to save, I know. To our pipeline demo development, not production test. So to the development one, select. Yes, replace it. And then we will see what happens, because now after this upload, our pipelines are no longer, or our workspaces are no longer in sync. So let's go back to the pipeline, and you see it now here. So I've uploaded it to this workspace, and now it tells me, hey, the development and test are no longer in sync. So I can click on this, and I see like I changed the sales, both the data set and the report. Of course, you can also only change the data set or the report, or you have a report, multiple reports connected to one data set. That's all possible. But here we have the simple case. I've changed the PBIX file, so I've overwritten both the report and the data set, and it tells me though what are different. And now I have the nice option to also only, for example, deploy these two and don't touch the other one. So if I know like it's okay that these two stay out of sync, then I don't have to deploy this to the other stages. And then I will do deploy to test, continue. And of course, here you saw it was green. So test and production, of course, were still in sync because there was another deployment is already in process. Okay, I've clicked some way. Live demo issues. Let's see. Now it worked. And now you see the thing here. So now development and test are in sync. but our production and test are now out of sync. I can do again here, compare. I see the same things, and I will also deploy this to production now. Continue. And then they are all in sync again. And in the meantime, I could have shared my report with people, the test report with people, and say like, hey, is this net revenue what you were looking for or not? And then I could change it to push it to production, update my app and everything. One thing that is a bit tricky, or that I found out is, or sometimes in this process can be, that when you push your changes now to the test stage, and I go there now, and oh no, I was in the June workspace. I, of course, need to go with this one here. And in my sales report, sometimes when you open the report, you will get an error if you didn't refresh your data sets. This is because it pushed the changes, but sometimes you also need to trigger kind of a refresh of the report. Otherwise, you might get an error, or sometimes the report will not render correctly. Then you have to refresh the browser or something like this, just for your information. And here you see something other interesting. So if we go back to the PBIX file for a second, you see that here I have all the way data back till 2018 till today. But if I go to my test report, I only have data for 2021. But it tells me that my reports are in sync. So what's the reason for this? And that's one of the really cool features of deployment pipelines, is that I can define parameters. So I can, for a specific part of my pipeline, I can define a parameter. So for example, a date parameter like here, because in the test space for people just to check, is it okay? I might not need the full data set. I just need a subset. I just need the last few days or weeks, and I don't need to refresh or upload years of data to just validate something. Or I could do some load testing in the test space with different parameters. Or I could also have a test database and a production database. It's also a production schema or something. That's also very common. And then you could say like, okay, everything in test runs on my test database, and I change something in the table and see if everything still works, or if maybe Power BI runs into an error because a format changed or column naming changed. And then once everything is fine, you can push it to production or something like this. And the setup here is also relatively easy. So let's go back to the deployment pipeline. And you have here this deployment settings button. And if I click on this, you have it for all your data sets. So the relevant one here is sales. And you see here that I've defined a date parameter and telling like, please only load data in 2021, or from the last three weeks or something like this. You can define it any way you want. And here you also have your data source rules. Regarding data source, there are some limitations right from the UI. You can't select any kind of data source, but in terms of like what you would typically use, like databases and everything, they cover a lot. There's also in the links I will provide, there's an overview of what is supported or not. But in general, these are the things here. You have a separate data source rule to switch this, or you work with parameters that way. And then you have a nice way of limiting your load within the deployment pipeline. And then in the end, I could again, I don't know if I've refreshed the, let me refresh again just to be sure, and then update our app and check our report and see if everything is working. And yeah, so again, this is for me, it's still relatively basic in terms of what it provides in this within the tool itself. I think this, what I just mentioned from Gustavo's question, the API they provide will come with a lot more functionality or tie in better into existing deployment pipelines or ALM processes that you might already have in your company. Update app. And go to the report, update go to app. And now you see we have our gross and net revenue in the app. But as long as we still gather feedback, it stays in the test space. And as long as we don't push it to production, we don't push any errors that might be or missing feedback or anything, and we don't interfere with the work of our other team members that use the reports for their daily work. And this is really one of the things that helps me a lot, or my company is also considering this, but that would help me a lot to have like this better control when you frequently change your reports. To quickly give you an overview again. So now you should see the presentation again. So overview of deployment pipelines. Again, it's an easy, basic application lifecycle management. So the development workspace you are using to design, build, and upload your content for the first time. Then you have the test workspace, which is the most critical one, where you share your content with testers, you gather feedback, or with the parameters, you can run load tests, or you can test a bit with the parameters, what works best. You can tie it into potentially production development spaces you have in your database. And then production is where you share your final content with everyone in your organization. Ideally, you never touch this workspace directly, but you always only push the changes there. Requirements that you have is the workspace must be a new workspace experience. So you remember that in the past we had the switch from old workspace experience to the new one. I would say probably by now everything you create is a new workspace experience. I'm not sure if you can even create old workspaces any longer, or if they were already migrated over, but still in the how-to they describe this. So just for your information, you can also, if you're still using old workspace, if this is still possible, you can also push them to a new workspace and then it works. And it's not allowed to be already assigned to another deployment pipeline, of course. So only one workspace can be assigned to one deployment pipeline. And to create pipelines, you also must be an admin of the workspace. But members can, or they can very soon. This was also in this announcement. I think they already can work with the deployment pipelines. They just can't create them on their own based on the workspace. So this is something that you need to be aware. Limitations is that currently there's only works for dashboards, reports, data sets, and paginated reports. Paginated reports was introduced, I think, back in April. So also relatively new. It does not work for workbooks. So you remember you can have Excel workbooks in Power BI. It doesn't work for this, so it won't sync. Goals, the feature we will talk about later. And data flows currently is also not supported, but they will soon be supported. So I have a link there with the announcement of the next things that will happen. And then you also have the option to really sync data flows. Have like test something with the data flow in the test space, and then have something in production for other people to use. I think that's also quite cool that this will come soon. Yes. So this is again the real rough rundown of what deployment pipelines do. What I just mentioned with the question with the API, I have the link. I have a huge list of links later on. There's also this blog post with the API described here. But this is the rough overview. So let me just check. But I think there are no questions for deployment pipelines, so that's great. Otherwise, there's also time at the end if you come up with a question there. So this one, and now, so I always have to select back here. Good, and now the second topic is the XMLA capabilities, the XMLA read-write capabilities. And this is probably the biggest topic together with paginated reports maybe, but XMLA read-write capabilities is the biggest topic. So XMLA stands for Extensible Markup Language for Analysis, I think. I hope that I didn't mix this up. And it basically is a protocol. It allows you to connect in terms of Power BI to the analysis service that Power BI is running on. Remember, we also had this in past meetups, for example, when we talked about Tabular Editor. So that you can now have the ability to actually not only interact with the Power BI report itself, but with the underlying analysis services model. And this brings a lot of additional power. So XMLA endpoint is really massive, and there's a ton of tools that you can use, mainly, of course, from the Microsoft landscape. So you can use something like a Visual Studio together with SQL Server data tools to do some sort of version control or to upload code this way. You can, of course, use the typical external tools like Tabular Editor or DAX Studio. You can use SQL Server Management Studio to run DAX queries on your on a report in the web. But one thing where I want to show you this is another external tool that we haven't shown so far, and this is the ALM Toolkit, the Application Lifecycle Management Toolkit. It's a free external tool you can download, but the real power of the tool comes together with Premium. And a use case I will show is, imagine that two people want to edit a report. And with Pro, of course, let's say they both have a Power BI report open, and then they have to, one person adds a measure and the other person adds a measure. And they have like, yeah, okay, but how do they align that they both have in the end both of these measures in the final report in the web? And with Pro, you have to then manually copy paste the measure. You can, to some extent, then do it easier with Tabular Editor, but still, it requires some manual effort. And the ALM Toolkit is a tool which allows you to connect to a report in the web service and only change what you actually changed in your report. So you can leave everything else untouched. Even if the measure that is, for example, in the web is not in your Power BI desktop file, you can still sync it. And this is what I will show you, because I think this is really a powerful thing. So I have another workspace here, XMLA enabled. When you have Premium per user, it's not like you enable it for a specific workspace, you enable it for your whole tenant then, basically. And what you have to make sure is you go to Settings in the admin portal, and there is this menu point Premium per user. And there you have some options, but the one we are interested in is here, data set workload setting. By default, I think it's set to read only, not to off, but read only. But you have to set it to rewrite and then apply. I already did this here, so but this is the point that you have to do. And there's one optional thing I will talk about later. But then once this is set to read write, then the things would work. So let's go to my workspace, and I have a report here. I've conveniently named it XMLA. And again, it's a super simple report. Just I didn't want to upload huge files now while recording. But the technique is the same. So we have a measure here, only one measure in the report, nothing else. And let's say now a scenario, we have two team members, and the one wants to add a measure 2 and the other wants to add a measure 3, but they don't talk to each other. And they both have a Power BI desktop file where there's only measure 1 included. Now, what would happen in Pro or in a Pro scenario would be, person without ALM Toolkit, the one team member would upload the report with measure 2, then you would have measure 1 and 2 in your in the web, and then the other person would come and would upload a report with measure 1 and measure 3, and then measure 2 would be deleted again. And this is what we want to avoid. So I will go back here and open my report. So this is my report. Super simple, as I said. It's a measure 1, and I've decided to really go heavy on DEX this time, and I have measure 1 equals 1. So I bet you've never seen more complex DAX. Yeah, but it's not about DAX today. It's really about the technique here. Okay, and now I will add another super complex measure. You can probably already guess what it will be. It's measure 2 equals 2. And just so the uploads are faster and everything. So we have our measure here. And now I will go to my external tools tab, and instead of pushing the whole Power BI file, I will use Alm Toolkit. Again, free tool. And give me a second because it opens on my other screen. This over, and this is what it looks like. Well, this is actually what it looks like when it opens up. So it tells me to define a source file and a target file. By default, if I launch Alm Toolkit through the external tools menu, the source file would always be my current file that I'm in. I can, of course, change this here, but this is my current file. And then the target file, I have to define something. And in this case, I want to connect to something which is already in the web. And you need to see, I need to provide a workspace here and a data set. This is already filled out, but how do I find this this workspace here? And this is, I find in, if I go to the workspace itself in the web, go to settings, and then you have here this premium menu. There you have your workspace connection. And then you can just copy it. You have this for all your premium workspaces. And you see here, I have 2 reports here, XMLA and pipeline report. And if I go back to my report, oh, no, sorry, to Alm Toolkit here, I've already entered the workspace. And if I also click on the data set, I could, yeah, I have to confirm again that it's me. Then I could also select the other one. I would stick to XMLA for now, but you see everything that's in the workspace would be listed here. And then I hit OK. And now it tells me, and this always reminds me a bit if you work with Git and sometimes sync the code there, it's a bit similar to this. So it tells me here, it gives me the things I have in my current report and tells me what they are. So I have my, in this case, for example, our 2 measures. This is what we're interested in. So measure 1, we also had this in the web, same definition, so nothing to do. And now I have measure 2, and it tells me that it's missing in target. So we have it here on the desktop. We don't have it in the web service. And then by default, it says create. I can also skip it, then nothing would happen, but the default behavior is create. Then I click on validate selection. It gives me again an overview of what it does now. So in this case, create measure KPI measure 2. Hit OK. And then I have to click on update. Are you sure you want to update? Yes, I'm sure. Give it a second. Success. Close. And I can refresh the comparison. And now it tells me, OK, measure 2 is now also in the web. Let's take a look. Go into our report. Go into edit mode. And there you see, our measure 2 is now there. Now, the interesting thing is, OK, at the same time, another team member, we go here, and I will quickly close this one. I will delete measure 2. Just so we are now another team member. We don't know about this measure 2, and we will create another measure, new measure. And this will be amazingly named measure 3. And now we have measure 1 and measure 3, but no measure 2. Let's do the same thing. External tools, Alm Toolkit. Only drag it over here again, compare, see, same process. Okay. Yes. Sign me in. And now you see, okay, measure 1, we have it in both. Measure 2 is now missing in the source file. I don't have it, but it's in the web. We just uploaded it. And measure 3 is the same. It's missing in the target file, so in the web. And you see here that I now can decide what to do with all these things. And you see this is basically the default behavior would be delete, because this is also the default behavior what would happen if you just upload your report to the web service. You would overwrite basically the report. If I click on validate selection, then you see all this. Okay, it tells me I will now delete measure 2 and I will create measure 3. Is this really what you want? Delete is probably not what I want. So I will go out of this and I will just select skip. And I still want to create my measure 3, but measure 2, leave it as it is. Validate selection again. Now you see it tells me I will only create measure 3. I will not touch measure 2. Okay. Update. Are you sure? I'm still sure I want to update. Close. Let's refresh the comparison. And the comparison now, of course, still tells me that measure 2 is missing in my source because I don't have it in my file, but the rest is now there. Let's go back to my report. I always do the browser refresh because sometimes in the cache, sometimes doesn't appear in the report. And go to my, again, my XMLA test here into the report, into edit mode. And now we have all the 3 measures available here, even though we didn't have measure 3 in our report. Another scenario is what happens if they upload the measure with the same name. So instead of measure 2, here I also name this measure 3 and have it like, I don't know, 3 plus 1. So it's a different DAX code. And I now do Alm Toolkit again. And drag it over, compare. Okay. And also this is covered. Here. Then it tells us update. So there's a difference in the expression. Your DAX code says 3 plus 1. The one in the web says 2. What do you want to do? Do you want to update it? Do you want to skip it? Whatever you want. So you have a lot more control here. You can also generate scripts or the changelog, basically of what you did. You can also sync files. I've not actively done this, but that's also possible. And it gives you this way of like, okay, when you have this process, you are using the Alm Toolkit to push your changes, and you often have the case that you are working together on something, or you get different requests from different teams working on a report. This gives you the option to secure that you're not accidentally overwriting something in your report. Again, this is just a super small example of XMLA, so this is not the only thing. As I said, there is a huge list of things you can do. But recently there was also a blog post announcement, I think very recently, about using SQL Server Management Studio for restoring older Power BI reports if you do it this way. So they've also covered this example. But I really think this Alm Toolkit is actually kind of a really hands-on example and something that also pro users might especially run into and say like, we always had this issue that another team member overwrote my changes to a report, and this tackles this to some extent. Alm Toolkit, again, it's free. I have the link also where you download it in the presentation, so you can try it out. Yeah, that's the XMLA demo. Let me go back to my presentation. Give you again this overview here. So as I said, XMLA provides the access to the analysis services engine in the web with the read-write capabilities. Then you can also write changes back to the service. Requirements, as I said, is you have to set the endpoint to read-write, otherwise it won't work. And optional, this is what they recommend, is enabling large model storage. As I mentioned earlier, with Premium, you have this, you have the large model support. And even if you don't have large models, Microsoft, I think, also recommends it because you can have an performance increase depending how strong you use this feature. And if you're pushing or relatively often push changes kind of to the web, then this can result in an increased performance. You also activate this in the premium setting where you also get the link for the workspace. Limitations, again, this is really depends on the use case. Most Microsoft tools support XMLA out of the box, especially those related to data. So, for example, Excel, I mentioned SQL Server Management Studio, Visual Studio, the external tools like DAX Studio, Tabular Editor, Alm Toolkit, etc., etc. I also read in one blog post, but I'm not 100% sure that also Tableau supports the XMLA endpoint, which would give you the option to connect Tableau to a Power BI dataset and then create a Tableau report. It's probably more a special use case, but I read somewhere that this is possible there. I don't have Tableau myself, so I can't try it out. The other third-party tools or anything that where you think like, I have this and this tool that I would want to use with there, it might need additional effort to get it running, or it might also not work. I'm not that deep into this. But at least within the Microsoft system, to just optimize your processes, like, for example, Visual Studio for code, better control over the uploads and things like this, or more complex model creation, what you can also do tabular models in Visual Studio. These XMLA options are a great way. And Alm Toolkit is, I think I just read it in the chat as well, hidden gem. That's also what I thought when I stumbled across this, because it's really kind of a use case that I also had in my daily work, where it sometimes happens that due to bad communication or something, you overwrite changes that someone else did.
Do you try to use it in either Power BI or Excel with Power Query? Does it work, or is it? Because I think Christoph mentioned this, that you can use XMLA with Power Query then, but I don't know if it's out yet.
I haven't done the Power Query one. I know the because the Power BI integration in Excel is actually very good by now. You really have the data in the data tab. You now have a dedicated Power BI connector. So this is usually good enough for me. I think the use case that Microsoft mentioned in their blog post was that you actually create pivot tables with this. So basically more for reading the content, not really writing back.
Yeah.
There's a ton more. But yeah, so for Excel, this typical use case would be you connect to it, and you can then use the Excel tools to generate a view on the data for yourself. Yeah. But again, also the link is posted there, so they give some examples. Relatively new. Also, I added the blog post with this, yeah, kind of also actually application lifecycle management tool with SQL Server Management Studio, where you can then do some version control there. Yes, this brings us to our third topic. This will be the last bit bigger one. This is AutoML, and then we have the smaller but soon also very powerful feature goals, which is still in preview. AutoML. So for this, I will go back to Power BI Web, and I will again go into our June workspace. Why not? That we just created. So AutoML, auto machine learning is probably also one of the biggest benefits you get with Premium, because it allows you to build no-code, low-code machine learning models right within a data flow. And this is actually also something very very cool and very new to Power BI, and it really adds some use cases that you couldn't do with Power BI so far. Power BI alone, of course, you have the Python integration and everything, so you can do it this way. But now again, you have the nice way of having it in the UI itself. So we are in a Premium workspace, and the first thing we do is we create a data flow. And I will just from scratch define a new one. And I have it in SharePoint. I have my link here. And next. Quick info when you want to test this. There's also a tutorial here from Microsoft. I'm also using this data there. They have it in GitHub, so you can just connect to this directly and grab the data there. I also tried it with OneDrive, having the data, so just the file over on OneDrive, and there I ran into some issues with some errors in the Power Query. I didn't dive too deep. Maybe one can fix it, but for me, SharePoint worked better. So just as an information for you, if you want to try it out, either use the GitHub connection with the demo files, which I recommend as the first step, and then use SharePoint. Transform data, and this is actually a training data set from Microsoft directly. Online shoppers intention. So what we want to do is, like, there's information about buyers and non-buyers that interacted with, let's say, our website or so. And we have some information like what month did they come to the website, with what operating system, were they users before or not, things like this. And based on this, we want to find patterns in the data that tells us what is the probability that there is a buyer or not a buyer. I will, of course, I only use, you see, I already did some testing stuff here, so I will only use the source file or online shoppers intention. Okay, and exactly the data I'm working with here, you can use then if you want to try it again on your own later. And I will just create the file or the table. Gives me an example. So here you see how the data looks like. Here you see what the month I mentioned, the operating system. Is it a returning visitor? Yes, no. And the interesting column for us is this revenue. Revenue meaning here buyer, yes, no. So true, false, or null in this case, and some information here. Okay. And I think you can think about use cases on your from your company or something that you ran into that are similar. So we have our table here, and the only thing we will change is we will change this field from string to true false, replace the current because then it works better. And we will rename this to our ML source. Not that good at naming stuff. Machine learning source. Okay. And that's it already. Save and close. And now let's hope that its validating is successful. And of course, our data flow and ML save. Yes, and then we do the refresh. And you see, so far, it's a typical data flow. So with our ML source, with our data. Let's go back to the June workspace. And I hope, yeah, the refresh seemed to work. So we go back in. And what we have now here is this additional menu regarding machine learning models. So let's click on this. And then that's always the nice thing. It breaks it down to what you actually can and should do now. So new to machine learning models, here's what you'll be doing. So first part is you create and train your model. We can then improve it, and then we apply it to data where we don't know the outcome to see like, okay, how would the results be? So let's get started. And the real nice thing is that if you are new to machine learning, then it really walks you through the things to do. So first you choose a table. We only have one. We have our machine learning source table. If you have multiple ones here, you select it. And then you select the outcome column. Outcome column meaning what do you actually want to predict? So here our revenue column. So we click on this. And then we do the next step where we choose a model. And then it already selects for us binary prediction because we select true, false. Okay, then probably you want a binary prediction. You can have other models here. I will stick to this one now, just because it's the easiest to cover. But you can also do regression and other things. And then you choose like, okay, what you're interested in. Well, true. So we are interested in the buyers or in the revenue, and then we can match the labels and say like, for example, here's a buyer. And we hit next. And there we select data to work with. And it already selects a few things for me. For example, here it didn't select columns where it says like a low correlation. You can still select those. If you think like, no, it's actually something I want to look at. I want to have it by product related, for example, if this is relevant for you. I will leave it as it is right now. Next. Give it my machine. And then last step is the training time. So you have something between 5 minutes and 360 minutes. I will move it all down to 5 minutes for now. It's not necessarily the more time you spend, then the better it is. But it's more like, okay, how much data do you have? So it's not like you have 10 million rows or 10,000 rows of data, and but you only have 2 columns, and then you want to predict something there. That doesn't really work. My smartphone is going crazy. Sorry. But here you can select anything, and then we choose save and train, and hope that everything worked. And then you see, okay, it's doing something here. It's returning an error. I think I clicked here the X, but it doesn't matter because I have, of course, prepared something here in my premium test space. It's exactly the same, but just so we don't have to wait the full time. If I go to the machine learning models, I named it here purchase intent prediction. And here it would say like, okay, when was the last time you trained it? If it's still training, then you would see the spinning that you know from other Power BI reports. And the interesting part is here the view training report. We click on this, and then it gives me again relatively easy to consume if you are new to this topic. If you're really doing heavy machine learning, then of course it's still better to dig a bit deeper there and also check up other options that you have. But still, it's a really good key functionality. And here it tells us now, again, very similar data set to what we just saw. It gives us some information about what it currently did. So we have our matrix here telling us based on the probability threshold that I selected. I will change this a bit so you see what it actually does. I have 300, roughly 300. Here we have the actual purchases, and we also predicted those. These two boxes here are the correct ones. Yeah, predicted purchase, actual purchase, and here no purchase, and we have an actual purchase. So those are the correct ones, and these are the errors: false negative, false positive, that you have here. And then with this probability threshold, if I move it, let's say, for example, down here, you see that these numbers will change. So the probability with what something in this scenario, someone will be described as a purchase or as a buyer, is changed. So you see here with a probability threshold of 0.2, we have here about, what is it, 1,200 predicted purchases. And if I move it all the way up to 0.8, we have only 250. You see this, the more you move it towards precision, it means like it's harder to predict someone as an actual buyer in this case. Both directions are, depending on the use case, meaningful. There's, for example, this typical use case of a fraud user where you might want actually, yeah, you want to hit as many as possible here. Also, if there are some errors, and on the buyer side, you might want to, yeah, depending on your marketing budget, you might not want to spam users or something. You also have an overview here of the cost-benefit analysis. This is something that, for example, in the scenario of marketing, if you know what your units, the users you write to cost and what's the benefit, then you see here in this case, it tells me that the optimum is like in this 7.7 range. And another nice thing is also here the top predictors. And those of you familiar with the key influencer visual, this might look familiar to you. So this is actually the exact same thing or the exact same overview. It tells us the key influencers for our prediction. So in this case, for example, as I said, there's a certain month where there's a prediction. I can also click on the page values, for example, to see a breakdown here, and something like this. There is some more information like the training details, which will show you the more you train it, how did it improve or something like this. I won't do a deep dive into this. And then you have the option here to either apply the model or to edit it. So we can change it again if we are not happy, or we can apply it. I will now hit the apply model. And then I can select my input table. There I would then select, for example, online visitors. I would select a name for the output column. I would select a threshold, what I just showed you. It selects the one I just last had, but I can also set this to 0.5 or something. And then I do save and apply. And then I won't do this now, but I will show you the result. If I go back to my test space, it will create 2 more tables for me, and I will show you how they look like. It will create the intent prediction and the prediction explanations. And let's go to Power BI Desktop and connect to those 2 tables and see how they look like. I just don't want to do the process of the refresh in the live demo. But it's really just, if I would have clicked it, it would have just basically created these tables for me. And yeah, of course, you then have to select the table where you don't have the outcome, and then it would run the model over this. So give me a second for Power BI to load, and then I will connect to the table. So almost there. Of course, on the other screen. Yeah. So, okay, blank report and get data. And get data, Power Platform, data flow. And we select the final data flow, the one that I created earlier. This was my premium test space one, online shoppers intent. And there you see here these two, intent prediction and explanation. Those are the two interesting ones. And now let's do transform data. And basically, you don't need the explanations table. It's just a bit of, it gives you a bit of convenience, and you will see this in a second. Because it gives you some explanations of how it generated the results. And this is this table here, but we want to go through the other one first. So you see, very similar to what I showed you earlier, with the same information that we also trained the model with, of course. And if we go all the way here, here we have our outcome. So this is our prediction. You see a lot of false, but there's also true, believe me. And basically, the only thing that the explanation table does is it gives you the explanation of these fields in a separate table, and then with the index you can join it. So it's easier to work with the data. So if you need this explanation or only one specific field, then you can just merge the tables via the index, and then they get the information this way. But you also have them here. That's the only difference of the two tables. So therefore, let's not load this one. Let's only load the other one. Close and load. And then I will show you the results, and then you can easily use it in Power BI Desktop like any other table or report. Create something out of it, or also other people can upload data to the data flow and then connect to it with Power BI Desktop, which is probably a bit more convenient than checking it in the web. And it shouldn't be too big, but let's wait a second. Yeah. Should be finished any second. Here we are. And then here, for example, oops. Now, come on. It's here. Here we have our outcome. We have our, let's do a bar chart of the outcome here. This one, true, false, for example, by month. And then I know, even though you usually create measures out of simplicity, let's just do the count this way. And then, for example, say we are here, we are only interested in the true ones. And then you see, for example, what we already saw in the web. November month is kind of a predictor here, so we see some trend here. The May, I think, was also mentioned. We could add the other information here and then really check, like, okay, what are things that might cause a buyer to or a customer to buy something. Really, just quick rundown of the feature. Again, it's something where you could do a whole other meetup, especially on the other models you have. Again, my typical overview page. So it is a no-code, low-code machine learning solution. You saw I didn't really write any code. The only thing that's low code would be Power Query. So if you have some, or the data flow, if you have some more complex data preparation there, then you might go into this. Besides that, no other skills needed there. It supports the binary prediction, what I just showed you, the classification, where you basically classify users based on certain tiers, for example, and regression models. That's mostly what I work with, but I haven't used Automl for this yet, where you predict kind of, for example, revenues based on certain scenarios. Requirements is it uses Azure Machine Learning. And so it also an Azure service, just like cognitive services, but this one comes at no additional cost, no additional subscription that you need for this. So everything again is fully covered with your license. What you need, of course, is a minimum amount of data and time to train the model. I showed you at least 5 minutes to train. And I think in terms of data, of rows of data, not 100% sure, but I think for binary prediction and classification, you need 20 rows. And for regression, you need 100. Don't expect great results, though. The more data you have and the more patterns you can find in the data, the better. But in general, there are these limits. And this is also something where that I didn't do first person, but as far as I understood the documentation is there's also the option to integrate other machine learning models from Azure Machine Learning and use those in Power BI. But there, of course, you need a separate subscription to do this, to do any specific model that you already worked on. But I think if you already did this and already using Azure Machine Learning, then the additional subscription is probably not a bigger issue. Just so you know, these 3 models that I mentioned here, they work out of the box. Last but not least, and this is a short and sweet topic at the end, I have to close presentation again. And this is the all new goals feature. Again, super new, 1 month old. Very basic still. It's still in preview, but Microsoft released a roadmap of what is planned, and so far they've always really iterated on the features. So I have no doubt that this works as well. And the nice thing about goals is that even if you have a pro license, you can at least check out how such a scorecard would look like. You can't create your own scorecard, but you can check out how would something like this look like. And you've probably already seen this goals entry, which is also appears on your pro license. And you have some nice samples here below. And you can, as far as I know, open them with pro as well. I think I also tried it. I think it works. And basically, it's a scorecard that, for example, my company also uses this system. Probably some other companies or a lot of other companies as well, where you track goals, quarterly, yearly, whatever, for different teams, where you have a quick overview. Okay, we are on track. We've completed something. We are behind something or anything. And here you can nicely also have these sub goals defined. So here, this sales sample, for example, says we achieve a monthly revenue of 500K. We are on track here. And the nice thing, and this is this part, is that it's actually connected, or it can be connected to Power BI in the background. This makes it quite powerful if you have basic KPIs like revenue, like new user acquisitions, and you already have reports with this number in Power BI, you can actively connect this. And then you see here an overview, how many goals you have in total and which are on track, at risk, etc., etc. If you click on one of the goals, you also get a closer, more detailed view with some recent activity where I obviously entered a new value or I posted something, which I never ever did, but in the sake of this sample, I can accept this. And so how do you create your own ones? This is then where you need premium. You have this button here, new scorecard. We'll call it ML, or not ML, scorecard. Then getting description and what workspace. Let's select our premium test space. Why not? Create. And then you can add a new goal. And for example, also make more money. I already entered this in a demo, as you can see. And then we have like, okay, we have the option to enter it manually or connect to data. So let's connect to data. And we can connect to our sales report, for example. Next. And this is the one you already know this. And we connect to our gross revenue. Hit connect. And we see like, okay, currently we are at 1.8 million. And let's say the target is 2 million. And we can say that looks pretty good. We are on track. And yeah, let's leave it like this. Save it. And then we see here the development of the numbers and see like, yeah, it's probably something we will make until then. And then here, I come from a gaming company, so we want to make more games. And let's say we don't track this. I will say like, okay, we have a target of 3 games. Currently, we have done maybe 1 game. And so we are maybe a bit at risk. We do need to do some more work here. Save. Then I don't see, of course, the data here. I can't connect it. This is not connected to Power BI, but I can still edit it. I say like, oh, suddenly we made a 2nd game and now we are on track. Everything is fine. And if I click on this, I then also see, I already see the on track here because I didn't leave the report and enter it again, but otherwise you would see the history. I have also a better scorecard, I think here already prepared with a bit more things. You also see new products launched. I can unwrap this and see like, okay, there's something done here. And in the revenue part, I can also add a new check-in. So I can change something here. I change this to at risk. We still need to look at it. This is basically the key functionality you have right now. And of course, you can also directly switch to the report. You can add also notes to this. You see this here. And have this nice overview. It's still very, as I said, very basic. It's still in preview, but the roadmap says that so for example, currently it's not available on mobile, which is probably for such a scorecard an important thing the more you use it. Another thing that is announced is automated rules. So you see that here I always have to manually switch this from on track to at risk or vice versa. This is something that can be automated soon. So you can say like, there's a certain revenue threshold that you reach, then it should jump to on track or at risk automatically. This is something that is coming. You will have some more customization options. And this is also the probably the most interesting point is you also get a score. We will also get a scorecard visual that you can attach to a report. So you can have, for example, your scorecard in a Power BI report. Then people can check it right within a Power BI report and not in a separate goals report in the workspace. So there's a lot coming to goals. Right now, it's very basic, but it's still this idea of having scorecards, if you use this and have them connected to Power BI, and if you are already heavily into Power BI and have your data there, then this is a huge benefit, in my opinion, to kind of have your goals connected to Power BI in the background, and they will always update, of course, when your reports update. So I definitely see the benefits there if you are into scorecards. Yes, last time our overview page here. Again, for goals, scorecards connected to the Power BI dataset. Requirements is basically nothing besides premium, and the samples you can also try out with Pro. Just look like how something like this could look like. And the limitations, as I said, it's still very new, only 1 month old, still in preview. But you have here the link to the roadmap. A lot of these things will be tackled, and I think this is also announced for this year, so it's not like too far away, and these features will slowly come into the goals, and then probably also they will gather more and more feedback. And here are the promised other links. to the topics I spoke about. We have the general announcement, some more information on the licensing itself, and then the topics I spoke about with some blog posts and also some Microsoft docs that are interesting in terms of the topic here. For example, also the tutorial I highly recommend if you're interested in AutoML. Try this out. They really walk you through these steps. And then you can compare it with do it with your own data and get the results there. And then, last but not least, also check us out on YouTube, of course, our YouTube channel, our Power Platform DE YouTube channel. And we also have a playlist there with our past events. Especially in this context, I want to mention again the Paginated Reports session we had in March, the recording you find on YouTube. So if this feature you were interested and hoped to see something about this today, I have to say no, that would be really too much. I'm already way above the time I planned for. But you see, I only covered the surface basically of these features, and still it took me over an hour. And you could have done even more. And so, yeah, definitely for paginated reports, that's way too big to just touch it in 10 minutes or so. Highly recommend the session we have there, and all future events. As long as it makes sense, we will record them and then also make them available there. Yes, so I have to drink something after talking so much. And last chance for questions, if there are any. I think not so far in the chat. Correct me if I'm wrong, Arthur.
Yeah, no, it's very big. I think if anyone who's still here has any use case with one of these topics, you're highly welcome to make an own meetup of it. So great. I really appreciate it, Chris, because it's so much of preparation.
Yeah.
Because it was like, 4 topics, almost 4 meetups.
Yeah, as
okay,
I said,
the goal was
I could
quite
only
small,
and
but it's couldn't have been better actually. So if you do more, it's a separate meetup for all the topics. And
again, only the XMLA you could do 3-4 sessions depending on the use case. AutoML as well. And the deployment pipelines are, especially with the API functionality, is also bigger. And even the goals feature, if you talk about scorecards, best practices, and things like this, even that would be a full meetup, not the feature itself now, but maybe once the new things are added. So I think it gave a good overview. Also, maybe as a thing, if you are interested in this, also as Arthur mentioned, if you maybe have a premium use case that you might want to share, like one of these things I talked about in more detail or something, we would be happy to welcome you as a talker. We would also, if you're interested, and also checking it, like having speakers in more detail on these topics. Nothing we can promise there yet, but this is something. For example, AutoML is a feature. I'm not a pro the data analyst there, but I know a few things. But there you could do like really do a deep dive on this, and or XMLA. Again, that's also a massive topic. So maybe there will come something in the future. Nothing to announce yet, but this is one of the options for next talks also. But this was really aimed for an overview, just so you can hopefully now better judge is premium per user something worth considering. And for me, definitely it is. And it really adds some benefit, especially on my end. My highlights are deployment pipelines and XMLA functionality and paginated reports also, because I have some potential use cases there. Yes, I think that's it. Thank you for this. And yeah.
Okay, if you do 101 again. Okay, might be also interesting. Yes. Yeah, Frauke says, yeah, we can do something about DEX and optimization. It's something we already talk all the time about, to offer, like, in addition to our traditional meetups, also like a kind of workshop, like series with DEX. We will talk about it next week, but we cannot promise if we'll still do it in summer, because it's actually, yeah, quite busy, and
the workload on both our
also,
ends was a bit bigger recently.
yeah. But it's we will definitely not give up.
No, it will continue.
Yeah.
But also this
there
one-on-one,
was some more output in the autumn and winter, because of the, yeah, everyone was able to speak in Berlin, actually, like Daniel Oetker and other international pros, but it doesn't mean it will keep good. And we're definitely planning a DEX workshop. So if you just have some DEX problems, in any case, you still can just so send us a message on LinkedIn, and yeah, maybe we can create something around it. But if not, we will do anyway with some test use case. So it's a kind of thing we want to offer, free DAX workshops. And yeah, the other thing is, of course, if you have any cool use case, especially with Alm Toolkit or with the Automl, but also other stuff, you're welcome just to give us a message, and then you speak up.
Yeah. So definitely it will continue, but summer is always a bit difficult. And I think we all hope for a good summer.
The first week of good weather. Last week I was like sleeping in the tent because I was on vacation, but I was sleeping in the tent at 5 degrees. And then this week, okay, but I can attend at the meetup. It's worth it. That my vacation was 1 week before.
Last year we also had this Power Query workshop we had there. And therefore we also thought about this DAX thing, but it's also something to prepare there. And it's like at the moment it was a bit tricky because of the other workload. But yeah, it will continue, and definitely also this one-on-ones are still planned.
Yeah.
And yeah, we will definitely announce something then over on the Meetup page. Good. Okay, then I will stop sharing.
Are you still recording, actually?
And also stop recording. And yeah, have a great evening, everyone, then. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye, and thanks for attending.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.